Yeah, they hate when you elevate.
ATP, what it do with your boy Clay Rain? This is that ATP Combat Media Show. Shout out to all my subscribers, all my supporters. So much love. Thank you for the support and the love. If this is your first time tapping into the content, I'm gonna invite you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Hit your bell icons as well, so you are getting alerts when all these content is dropping. So the guarantee, man, rumor has it, right? So there's talk in the town about your boy Rain in his position as far as conversations go on pay-per-view sales and its relationship to the business or the topic of Gaurantee Tank Davis, Errol Spence, Canelo Alvarez, and all the other big stars in the boxing space that, you know, deem pay-per-view events, right? And a narrative is being pushed or pushed around that it's aiming at one particular fight, and it really isn't, right? So let's put some perspective on what the conversation about. The conversation is about why certain fighters are taking such a long time in the PBC in particular, when we're talking about fighters like Errol Spence, who have taken their time and are taking their time to make their debut ever since the PBC has transferred over to leaving Showtime and working with Amazon Prime. And if you guys don't know, have always questioned and had concerns about the structure of the deal, and not for any reasons as far as it's my business per se, but just more so in the spirit of fights being made, the fights I want to see being made. Why aren't they coming together as we, as fans, some of us, maybe there's a group of us out here who have isolated their opinions to just wanting to see fights, don't caring who fights who, but for the people who care about their fighters fighting and not seeing them fight, why is this happening? And I speculated in the direction of, listen, Tank Davis took his time to starting his fights with the PBC Amazon Prime deal. If you guys remember, back in March was the beginning of PBC's first event. That was the event that we saw where Tim Tszyu and Sebastian Fundora headlining the pay-per-view event, right? And what we saw in that event was, we saw that Tank moved on from that opportunity, right? Pushed it out until June and came out in June. And Tank spoke during that time period. You heard Tank speaking in tweets about, you know, certain deals that were supposed to come together that didn't come together. And he even warned and told the boxing space that if we didn't see him back with the PBC, that we know the reason why, right? We also saw him give other little hints when he finally did put the fight together with Frank Martin at a press conference he had on the opening press conference. He stated that he had a huge deal that was going to beat Mayweather's deal that he had back in the day around his age, and how this was a big $200+ million deal that was coming around, and we were going to see what it was. That being said, there were rumors going around that this deal was what stopped Tank from performing earlier that year. Now, some people may want to speculate in the direction of dealing with the law, him having issues with his city and the case that he had at that time. And those are all legitimate possible reasons as well, right? But even Canelo Alvarez, in turn, had an issue with the PBC. Rumors going around that he was wanting to make sure that his guaranteed pay was in an escrow account before he was willing to move forward and schedule any fights. This was the rumor going around. Canelo Alvarez was shopping around. It was well known throughout the space that he shopped around with Matchroom. He shopped around with other promotional spaces to see if they were going to be able to facilitate money that he was asking for up front as guaranteed money to get into a fight. He ultimately ended up coming back. The PBC was able to lock in his guarantee for him, and he was able to put that fight together with Jaime Munguia, if you guys recall. So I'm saying to myself, what's stopping Errol Spence from moving forward? He stepped into the ring that night, challenged Sebastian Fundora, said that he was ready to make that fight happen. There were rumors going around that the dates were going to be around this month in October, that we were expecting to see that fight happen, right? And ultimately, the fight came, went, and is coming back around again. And now we're hearing that the fight that they gave a date for sometime in January, now rumor has it that it may be coming in March, right? So it seems like the can keeps getting kicked down the road, and it's like, why? A lot of people will choose to say that it's Errol Spence who's choosing to not make these fights happen. He's not ready. Maybe his surgery. Maybe he's dealing with injuries. All kinds of excuses. But generally speaking, pointing it towards the direction of Errol Spence and putting it on his shoulders as a reason why these fights aren't getting put together. And I said, and maybe it's that, or maybe it's the PBC as well. Maybe Errol Spence feels like he's in the same boat as Tank Davis or as Canelo Alvarez, and feels like he as well should be allocated guaranteed money up front, right? That Canelo Alvarez and Tank Davis getting their guaranteed money up front doesn't mean that they're not getting their back end on the pay-per-view, but guaranteed money kind of gets around the whole entire situation, which is what today's topic is about, which is about pay-per-view sales and how are pay-per-view sales today affecting these fighters' pay, where PBC's model was a eat what you kill model, with people stealing pay-per-views at the high numbers that they're stealing them at. How does that help these fighters feel more confident about just taking low guaranteed paydays, expecting big paydays on the back end when these pay-per-views sell? Now, Tank Davis has a fight coming up with Lamont Roach. You guys are well aware of this. In December, we're expecting to see them fight. And I stated that, listen, this is a fight that the fans haven't asked for, right? Now, you combine that with, or compound that with, they haven't asked for the fight, and you're going to charge them anywhere between $70 to $90 a fight to see the fight, right, for the event. Now, Tank has his supporters. Fans of Tank out there are going to try to support Tank. But it does come to a point to where if you keep on force-feeding fights to these fans that they're not asking for, how long before the fans begin to steal the fights themselves? The ones that aren't stealing the fights already, right? How many of these fans are willing to continue to spend top dollar when you have people like Turki Al-Sheikh putting out stacked cards with competitive 50-50 fights on them for $19.99, or putting out a fight just recently, was it the Dimitri Bivol fight? Dimitri Bivol ended up not even being on the card. That's a whole nother story, right? Ended up being on the card, but show for free on ESPN. But they sold that card for $49.99. And going on into future endeavors, it sounds like Turkey and them are heading in that direction for keeping these fights at a low price. If you're going to push out fights out there for $70 to $90, the fights are going to have to make sense. And if the fights aren't making sense, there has to be a fear that on the back end, these pay-per-views aren't going to do as well as they could be doing, and somebody like Tank Davis or Canelo Alvarez is going to be protecting themselves by having guaranteed paydays from these pay-per-views not necessarily doing as well as they expected them to do. Now, if this has turned into a whole mess out here as far as hatred towards Tank or statements being made to put down a fighter, it's not. This is called critical thinking. This is called giving a perspective and giving you reasons behind my perspective. Now, feel free to disagree. Feel free to push back at it and say that this is not going to affect Tank, that Tank's pay-per-view sales will be as high as they've ever been. He's breaking records. I believe he did very well with that fight against Frank Martin, was some good numbers, well over 350, almost 400,000, I heard. We never know what the pay-per-view numbers actually are because they're rarely actually sharing those numbers, but I'm hearing it did pretty well, right? And that was a pretty decent fight. It was coming off in a hiatus. I myself was excited for the fight. But if you guys are being honest with yourself right now, the boxing space is pushing back right now at the idea of this Lamont Roach and Gervonta Tank Davis being a fight that the boxing space wants to see. You guys let me know what you think in the comments. Maybe I'm far off. Is this a fight that you guys have been wanting to see? And that being said, how many people out here are willing to pay top dollar, $70 to $90 for a pay-per-view to see a fight that they don't want to see? Now, the undercard clearly is going to have to be super stacked with fights, and they're going to have to find a way to get around this Tank Davis-Lamont Roach fight to offer you other fights that you may be willing to see that you'll pay the $70, $90 for. The other part of this conversation is I said that one could argue that this is fight between Lamont Roach and Tank Davis is a fight that is not good for boxing. Look, I stand on my square. And the reason I said that is because Lamont Roach is a great fighter, but if this is a fight that the fans aren't asking for and you're charging them high premium cost for the pay-per-view, $79, then what's going to happen to the fans who have chosen to steal this fight, who used to be supporters, who used to spend the $70 to $90 for the pay-per-view, who are now streaming the fights for free? How likely is it that those fight fans come back into the space of paying for the fight, even when you do give them the fights that they want? Why wouldn't they go to these streaming platforms and watch these fights for free? Let's be honest. That's all it is. It's just about honesty. Now, feel free once again to disagree with some perspective, disagree with the conversation. It's okay. Not everybody thinks the same. This is the world we live in. But I do have to push back at the idea that the reason I'm saying this is because I'm hating on a particular fighter. It really has nothing to do with that. It's really wrapped around trying to get to the bottom line as to why we're not seeing the fights we want to see. Specifically right now, it could be spoken about with other companies, but they're giving away a lot of fights. But specifically with the PBC, who seems to be centrally focused on pay-per-view events and telling fighters that we're going to give you low guaranteed pays because on the back end, you're going to eat what you kill. In a space where pay-per-views are being taken and stolen regularly. We know how this goes, not just for boxing, but for sports across the board. This is happening. So what is the PBC going to do with the business model to structure it in a way to where you, the fan, can see the fights that you want to see, that the fighters are comfortable with fighting and getting the money that they want to get as well? Let me know what you think in the comments. It's your boy Claymore Rain. Is this far-fetched? What do you think about pay-per-views? Are you going to buy this pay-per-view with Lamont Roach and Tank Davis? On top of that, have you guys been buying all these pay-per-views? And how many of you guys honestly been doing the Fire Stick gang, right? And what motivates you guys to do the Fire Sticks? Is it because of you're just going to take it anyway? Or does the quality of the fights and the matchups make a difference in making a decision as to whether or not you're going to buy a pay-per-view or not? Let me know what you think. It's your boy Claymore Rains at ATP Combat Media Show. Once again, shout out to all my subscribers. If this is your first time, like I said in the beginning of the video, I'll say it again on the way out. If this is your first time tapping into this content, I'm going to invite you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Hit the button. Hit the subscribe button. It's right there. It's right there. Hit the subscribe button. Hit your bell icons as well so you are getting alerts when all this content is dropping. And at this point, we out.